great, y'all. These are your notes for Chapter 1, Section 4. I believe that every single thing that I'm going to show you in here is review. I don't think I get to teach you anything new today, which is kind of a bummer, but whatever. So we're doing like slopes, parallel, perpendicular, positive, negative slopes, things like that, how to graph lines. Like I said, all review. I have your slope formula written here. You need to make sure that that's memorized. Remember, it's change in y over change in x. Don't get those upside down. I am amazed at how many people in a college-level math course get this upside down. They do their x's on top and their y's on the bottom, and I'm thinking, people, you have been doing slope for like 4 years now. You should not do this wrong, but it happens every year. So here's your slope formula. We are going to find the slope of the line passing through these points. And just to make sure that you know what x1 and x2 and all that means, you just got 2 points. And since this one came first in the problem, I'm calling it the first point. If this is the first point, this is the first x value, and this is the first y value. If this is the second point, then this is your second x and your second y. So to do the slope, I'm going to grab my second y, which is 1, minus my first y, which is 0, over my x2, which is 3, minus x1, which is negative 2. So this was 3 minus negative 2, and I get a slope of 1/5. When looking at lines on a graph, make sure you can easily identify when a line has positive slope, negative slope, 0 slope, and where the slope is undefined. We did this in another page of notes where you graph a line where your equation is in slope-intercept form. Notice I grab my y-intercept and I plot it. I look at my slope and I do rise over run, positive 3, positive 4. Or I can do negative 3 over negative 4. You all know that a negative over a negative equals a positive. If my equation is in standard form, I usually prefer to find the intercepts. So to find the intercepts, I'm going to make y 0. So if I make y 0, that completely wipes out this term. So when I'm looking at my x-intercept, really all I'm left with is 2x and 12. 2x equals 12. My x-intercept is 6. Look where I put it, right on my x-axis. It is its own point. For the y-intercept, I'm going to make x 0. Well, if I make x 0, that wipes this term out, and all I'm left with is 3y equals 12. So y is 4, that's my y-intercept. It goes on my y-axis. It has its own point, and I connect the dots. For this one, honestly, I have not memorized the equation of a horizontal line and the equation of a vertical line. I think it through every single time. So, because I'm terrible at memorizing. I am just terrible. If I understand something, I don't have to memorize it. I can think it through. So when I see y equals 3, I'm thinking y has to be 3. What does it look like when y is always 3? It looks like this. If that's too much deep thinking for you, then just picture yourself making a table. If you make an XY table, y has to be 3. And you've got all these points that you can plot on your graph to make your line, but y has to be 3 in every single point. So the equation for this is a horizontal line. Again, I would think it through. X equals negative 2. I don't just have it memorized that it's a vertical line. I'm thinking x has to be negative 2 all the time. That's what this looks like. So that's how I get there quickly. If you need to think it through a little bit more, picture yourself making an XY table and Every x value that you put in has to be -2, and y can be anything. And look at all those points you can make. All right, there's a lot of writing on this page. Reminder, if I'm going too fast, and I probably am going too fast for you to copy everything down, why don't you listen and understand, and then pause and copy. It's kind of like getting your notes twice. It's kind of like listening and understanding, and then writing and understanding. So just keep in mind that you have that option. I would really like you to memorize the point slope form for equation of a line. I know that y equals mx plus b is probably your favorite. But when you create a line, I would rather you create it in this form. And I'm going to say this to everybody, even though it doesn't apply to everybody, but for those people who will be going on to calculus, whether here or in college, you will have to write equations of lines frequently. And what I always encourage my students to do, and what the AP exam wants my students to do, they want the students to write it in this form and leave it in this form. Don't do extra work. Don't change it to y equals mx plus b. Get your information, write it, circle it, be done with it. So I want you to get really, really comfortable with point slope form. So I've got on there that you need to memorize it. For the first example, I've kind of color-coded that in our point slope form equation, everything that you see in black is locked in. It gets written every single time. Whenever you see the green here, that's where your ordered pair goes. And what you see in red here, that's where your slope goes. So I've highlighted this point is green, the slope is red, y minus, that's locked in, that has to be there. This is where your y coordinate goes from your point, equals, that's locked in. This is where your slope goes, parentheses, x minus, that's all locked in, and then my x coordinate is 4. And the only thing I did to simplify that is I changed that to a plus. It's not proper to leave this as minus a negative. Most of you, when you write it, you're going to automatically do y plus 3. So I'm gonna box it in or circle it. I'm gonna leave it as my answer. Find the equation. Yeah, it didn't say that it had to be one way or another. So this is a fine answer. Now, this says, or you can change it if you would like extra work. So if some of you just insist on, hey, I like this form so much better, I don't even like looking at it in that form, I'm going to change it, you can change it, just don't mess it up. Because if it doesn't say which form to put it in, just put it in the form that you write it in, and then you don't have to do extra work. Okay, next one. It only gave me 2 points. So I have a little bit of work to do first. I don't have the slope, so I need to find the slope. So I'm going to use my slope formula. There it is. I'm going to use point slope form and pick the point that you like the best. You can either use this one or this one. Just be careful, don't mix them up. And either equation here is acceptable for your answer. Moving on. Parallel lines. Parallel lines, 2 lines that are parallel are going to have the same slope. 2 lines that are perpendicular are going to have slopes that are opposite reciprocals. Okay, that means they're different in 2 ways. I know a lot of you throw the word opposite around and you don't really mean it. Some of you mean like upside down opposite. Hold on a minute. Okay, opposite reciprocal. 2, that means they're different in 2 ways. Opposite means one slope is positive, one slope is negative. That's technically the definition of opposite. positive versus negative. Okay, so that's one of the differences, is they're positive. The other difference is their slope fractions are literally turned upside down. That's what reciprocal means. So one of them's going to be positive, one of them's going to be negative, one of them's going to look like this, and the other one's going to look like this. They're different in two ways, opposite reciprocals. So in this problem, it's asking us to write an equation of a new line. Brand new line. We need to end our new line in slope-intercept form. This is telling you gotta do a little extra work at the end. That's okay. Our new line has to pass through this point, and our new line has to have the same slope as this line. So here's this line. I wonder what its slope is. So I solve for y. So I subtract 2x, I divide both sides by -3. Here is a slope-intercept form for this one, okay? Same line. Here's its slope. Slope is 2/3. So keep in mind, 2/3 is my slope that I've identified from this line. Now, what am I going to do with it? Well, the problem said make a new line that's parallel to this one. So since it said parallel, I'm going to use the same slope. So, new line, same slope. The directions told me it passes through here. Here's my equation. Y minus equals slope x minus, and then unfortunately back up in the directions it says yeah, that's a good form but not acceptable for your final answer. So for our final answer, I'm going to distribute my slope. You get fractions, don't freak out, either do them or take out your scientific calculator. One or the other. So you get fractions, subtract 1 from both sides, and that's what you get. This is your new line, and it's parallel to this one. Notice they have different y-intercepts, but they're parallel. Next problem is, okay, kind of the same thing. Write an equation of a new line. We're going to have some extra work to do at the end again. New line. My new line passes through this point. My new line is going to go through here. And it has to be perpendicular. It has to have opposite reciprocal slope to this one. So here's this line. I need its slope. Well, that's nice. It tells us what it is right there. Slope is 2, or 2/1. That's the slope of this line. However, when we go to write the equation of our new line, since it said make it perpendicular, I need you to do 2 things to this fraction. I need you to turn it upside down and make it the opposite. Since it's currently positive, I need you to make it negative and turn it upside down. Now you've got to do that right away. So I did it right away. Where am I? I did it right away. Passes through here, and see, the moment that I write my new equation, I am using my point and my brand new slope. You've got to put your new slope in here, not at the end. New line, new slope. Make sure you put it in there. So I've got my new slope here. I've got point slope form. Again, the directions said do the extra work and change it to slope intercept. It'll ask you to do that once in a while. And so I distribute the -1/2 and I subtract 1 from each side. And that's what I get as my final answer. Okay, and then we got this last problem. This one's a fun one. This one is totally like, okay, you've learned about parallel lines and perpendicular lines. Now can you do a problem that's worded differently totally on your own? Well, for those of you that like the step-by-step, Mrs. Neal, just show me every step to do and I do it every problem, I'll do it every time, I promise. Okay, well, this one's a little different. You've got to use your brain on this one, not just step 1, step 2, step 3. You've got to use your brain. So, basically, here's what it says. Find K. So my answer needs to be K equals. Find K. So that this line is parallel to this one. And then there's another problem. Find K so that the pink line and the green line are perpendicular. So we're going to have a parallel answer, K equals. We're going to have a perpendicular answer, K equals. Find K. Well, keep in mind that we've got two different lines here. We've got this line, I made it pink. We've got this line, I made it kind of greenish. And the problem talks about parallel and perpendicular. So, since it talks about parallel and perpendicular, why don't we check out what the slope of each line actually is? Now, I'm going to look at the green one first because the green one doesn't have an extra letter in it. So, green one, I copied it down. Now, all I'm doing is I'm solving for y. So I'm going to add 10, I'm going to subtract 4x, I'm going to divide by -3. Looky here, I get y equals 4/3 x minus 10/3. This, and this, and this, they're all the same thing. Okay, and I rewrote it right here. Same thinking, okay? Let's move to the pink line. We've got an extra variable in our pink equation, but that's okay, you can handle it. Ready? Let's solve our pink equation for y. Add 9. Subtract this term. You're like, well, I don't know what k is. You don't have to know what k is. It's subtract it. Subtract it from here, subtract it from here. Well, I can't take this away from that. You're right, you can't. Just write it down. So I've got my 6y, I've got this term, which is now on this side, the 9, which is now divide everything by 6. So divide this by 6, divide this by 6. Well, I can't divide negative k by 6. Well, you're right, you can't divide. Just write it down. Negative k over 6. That's your coefficient for x. And then 9 over 6 is 3/2. Okay, weird, I know, but just write it down. You don't have to figure anything out yet. Just write it down. I divided by 6. This is what it looks like. So, I'm going to take this pink equation, and I'm just going to copy it up here. So, I've got my pink transformed equation. I've got my green transformed equation. Check them out. They look nothing alike. They don't have the same y-intercept. It doesn't look like they have the same slope, but this one's slope has a k in it. Remember, that's what we're trying to solve for. So, again, look at their slopes. The slope of this one is negative k over 6. The slope of this one is 4/3. Remember what the question asked? Find k so that the two lines would be parallel. So I take this slope of the pink line and this slope of the green line, and for parallel, I set them equal to each other. Now, I think y'all can cross multiply and solve that. Multiply across, multiply across. That's my answer to make the lines parallel. You need to pause it, copy it down, process it, do it. All right, what would make those two lines perpendicular? So remember what my slopes were? Here and here. Take one of them. Doesn't matter which one. Take one of them and change it 2 ways. Turn it into its opposite and turn it upside down. Opposite, upside down. That's what I did. Now, be careful. Somebody silly would do this, I know. Somebody silly would do it to both of them. If you made both of them opposites and turned both of them upside down, you know what you're going to get? Same thing you got over here. Okay, don't do that. Just one of them, opposite reciprocal, cross multiply. There's your answer for K to make the lines perpendicular. And that's it for section 1-4.